You're listening to Episodes, a podcast from the Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association.
Please be aware that the content of this podcast is created for general, informational, and educational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Always seek the advice of your physician or other qualified health provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition.
Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard on this podcast.
The opinions, perspectives, and experiences shared by our guests, including medical professionals and scientific researchers, are solely their own and do not necessarily represent the views or official policies of their respective institutions, employers, professional organizations, or any other entities they may be associated with.
Their appearance on this podcast does not constitute an endorsement by the Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association.
Furthermore, neither the Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association, its board of directors, employees, volunteers, hosts, or anyone associated with this podcast takes responsibilities for any actions or inactions on your part based on the information provided.
We do not endorse or recommend any specific tests, physicians, products, procedures, opinions, or other information that may be mentioned.
Hi, and welcome to episodes of podcast by the Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association. I'm Belinda Killian, CVSA president and caregiver to someone with CVS.
And I'm Jason, her son, a patient with CVS, and then your on and off again host.
Each episode, we will bring you another CVS perspective from patients, caregivers, clinicians, researchers, and more. Because every voice can have an impact, our goal is to offer a trusted source for these CVS perspectives to be heard to foster crucial conversations, increase awareness, and ultimately change the way cyclic vomiting syndrome is seen and understood. I'm excited to talk about a hot topic that's been coming up a lot lately at CVSA on our online community, social pages, traveling with CVS.
It's a good one.
I think this is a great topic for you and I to talk about because it took us several years and several attempts to not only identify the different struggles that we would have with traveling, but ways that we could be successful traveling with CVS. So a couple things I thought we could really work on highlighting, or I should say we should highlight before we get started, is that it took both of us, or really our whole family, learning to adapt to what we were capable of doing. And first I'll say for me, mainly me, is that I'm a rest after the vacation person, right? I want to go all out before sun's up and back well after the sun is down. I've always said that I'll rest when I'm dead. That's not the healthiest way to live, but it works for me. Does it work for you, or really any chronic illness, as I'm beginning to learn with migraine? So we need to keep that in mind, as you know, we're already kind of at odds with what CVS would allow us to do. Traveling was not always an issue, but like many things, working and managing CVS, right? We don't want to mess with what works. So when we find something that works, we tend to stick with it. Let's kind of go back a little bit to when things were really, really bad with your CVS. I know we're not fond of talking about it or thinking about it, but I felt like we really needed to at that point push for living life, right? Once you were able to start coming back from being as sick as you were, I pushed you to the edge and back, right? So people learn from me. It's a slow process. So, we did Yosemite, we did Disney, and this is where we had to learn to adapt to what you were capable of, right? Because we would try, because we'll also say that you have motion sickness. Yes?
I'd say so.
Been something that you struggled with even as a very young child. So it also happens to play into your triggers for CVS.
That does.
So traveling can be complicated.
That's an understatement, but yeah, pretty much. Good way to sum it up.
Yes. So
there's a lot involved for sure.
There was. So let's talk about some of the highlights of that, right? Where do you think we should start? Do you want to start with Yosemite or Disney? Because we tried to venture out on day trips, right? So Yosemite was kind of the first one.
Yosemite was the first.
Because it was, things were bad. as they started to improve, it made us go, we need to stop putting off to tomorrow what we could do today. So that made me go, I've never been to Yosemite. Let's go.
I mean, we talked about it for years, for
For
sure.
years, yeah. So we just kept putting it off and putting it off. So for some reason, my brain, well, it's because things were as bad as they had been.
Yeah.
I went, we need to stop delaying and just start living our life. So Yosemite, we went to Yosemite, and Yosemite was tough because you were still physically impacted by what you had been through on some of your more aggressive coalescent episodes. And we really hadn't found medication at that point. We were still in the trial and error process
Yeah, still kind of
for that.
feeling it out.
Right. But we tried to manage with what we had and what we knew were issues for you. So first of all, traveling.
Yes.
Traveling is a big one. So we would use typical motion sickness aids issues,
Yep.
salty foods, making sure you were hydrated.
Kind of
Frequent
sticking to the
stops,
antiemetics as well. Pre-cheating.
pre-treating.
But yeah, the
So,
salty foods, the hydration's huge.
but that didn't help
That's
you with things like so the heat, because
no,
Yosemite's warm, or it was at the time that we went.
especially the time of year we went. Yeah.
So heat, because some people with CVS struggle with either the hot or the cold, right? So for
Yeah.
you, it's heat, and
Very heat
it's
activated for sure.
heat
I
activated.
would almost go as far to say it's a trigger as well. Very
Yes,
intense heat.
yeah, because it's like your body just can't even function once it gets to a certain level of warm.
Mm.
Um, so we tried to address all of those, and Yosemite's not conducive to any of those. Right. And then you're hiking, which
Yeah,
the
the
heat plus the physical
exertion.
exertion. So let's just say that was one of our learning experiences. So we came back and we kind of went over what worked, what didn't, right?
Yep.
I have a picture of you in Yosemite, and I still kick myself for making you do that, right? Because you just look miserable. You were happy we went, but you were miserable.
It was rough.
It was rough.
I do remember partly along the trail going, at this point you can't really go back from here. You
Hmm.
kind of have to go all the way through. I remember part of our conversation after that going, yeah, it was probably too much too quick.
Yeah. Yeah, but we also made sure we tried to accommodate for things like that. Let's hydrate, let's sit, let's wait,
Yeah.
so it just, um, I had to learn that I couldn't vacation the way that I tend to vacation. And there was nothing wrong with that. It's a learning experience for me, but we all had to adapt, which bothered you. Um, I think that kind of moves us into Disney. Let's talk Disney.
Okay.
So, or do we talk about prep? What did we do for some of our prep initially? Can you recall? I know I went, because it's like the way I vacation. I went crazy. I would go, all right, where are we going? I would research hospitals. I would research everything. Not that you knew a lot of that.
But the same, like, because I don't think there's, from my end, it was much like that. If anything, it was more kind of self-focused. Trying to make sure that I was in the best condition I could be in.
Mm-hmm.
So it really started with the supplements and vitamins, making sure that my body's in the best condition it could be in, along with hydration and rest. Those are probably the two best things you can focus on. Um, Keeping very regimented with them was probably the biggest bit. And I know it's not quite what we did for, just traveling in general, but like even for like school at the time,
Mm-hmm.
where we'd kind of like during those longer holidays, we'd start the 15-minute increments for how late you were staying up. I know we're traveling, you can't always go to bed the same time every day. So elongating the time you would go to bed or even wake up kind of starting with those 15-minute increments.
Mhm.
So, like the typical school night, nine's pretty much when I'd be pretty adamant about going to bed. So when you're preparing to travel, you'd start a couple of weeks out or a week or so out, elongating the time before you go to bed by like 15 minutes a day, just so you can start kind of building up that the habit. So you're not just surprising your body by deciding to stay up for a couple more hours, just so you had a better chance of kind of making it through
Mhm.
should anything occur.
Right. So we were trying to lay the best basis if we're changing
Mhm.
time zones, but yes, hydration, we would always up the hydration just because we know traveling dehydrates us.
Yes.
So that was one of our big things, using oral hydration supplements, drip drop, IV hydration, tools like that. Um, and that's something we try and focus on even while we're traveling, is hydration and sleep. So we did try a couple times. Disney, we left in the middle of the night trying to get you to sleep in the car so we didn't disrupt your sleep pattern. So instead, we disrupted everybody else's.
Well, it's also there to try to help combat the motion sickness as well.
Mhm,
I
because you
hope it
could sleep for it through it.
definitely
Hmm.
it could skip that bit of the struggle.
And it backfired on us anyway,
Mhm.
because you couldn't sleep in the car, much like the
Unfortunately.
airplanes. But it can work for some people that can sleep in those, right? So
Yeah. Well,
traveling
it's the
overnight, we
trial
might,
and error.
yeah, part of it. Um, so that's, those are a couple of my like top tips, is try and adjust those, right? Or if you can sleep on a plane or in a car, that was kind of our first place we started.
Right.
Hydration, we knew it was always bigger. The supplements you talk about, the CVS supplements, making sure you don't always take them, but we know that your levels can drop, especially during an episode. So just trying to keep your CoQ10, magnesium, B vitamins higher.
Mhm.
That was kind of just one of our preemptives, helping us to feel better about disrupting your whole equilibrium and processes and sleep patterns.
Right.
um I've seen a lot of people talk about not telling kids that they're going on vacation or something, so they don't have that anticipatory um excitement
Anxiety. Yeah.
comes off with stress, right? um so I've seen people use that. um I tried to just be a little more. I mean, I over prepared, obviously, if I'm researching hospitals.
I mean, it can
um,
also depend on like the intensity you're used to too, and just kind of like that mental safeguard.
well,
So
and it
while
was.
I might have not known at the time, I appreciate it and hearing it now, of course.
I
It's not something I
well,
was thinking about at the time.
well, and that was the thing, right? Is I think a big part of even managing your episodes, because no matter how long we would go in between episodes, we always anticipated the next one, right?
Yeah.
We always had that dread, that feeling that it was looming, and we were always just waiting for the next one. And I think when we were able to do the mind shift of going, let's not sit here and worry about it, let's just know that whatever happens, we're just going to take care of it, to try and alleviate that extra stress, anxiety, anticipation.
Yeah.
And I think that was a big help uh, when it came down to it, right? So, although I was telling you, don't think about it, we'll handle it, right? Just trying to take that stress and anxiety off of you. It doesn't mean I wasn't. And part
Yeah.
of that is the, talking, preparing for things like if we need to go to an emergency room, what one would we go to?
Yeah.
That was me mentally preparing. Plus, when it comes down to like insurance, you need to know what one your
Yeah. Where you
insurance is
can
going to
go.
take. um, so it was stuff like that. I would try and prepare just in case. So we were just always ready. We didn't have any surprises. Um, from there, it was kind of preparing. Just, I mean, as it is. Let's kind of talk about present day. Everybody has something for you. right? Your sister carries your abortives. I carry your abortives. You carry your abortives. Your dad carries them. They're in the cars. They're ever, we try and make sure they're just everywhere. So we're
Yeah.
never without them. So plus, we joke about the vehicle that I bought last has buckets in the floorboards. we joked it was a perfect car for us because it had built-in vomit buckets. But we do
This is really
have
just storage to put those in.
it is, that's right, the full ones.
Yeah.
But having just being prepared sometimes with the basics, because there's times that I just don't leave the house without Ziploc bags, right? Because that's what we would put vomit in. Um, we do now have a Mrs. Bags in the cars. Under the seats. We had buckets in the cars.
The backups to the backups.
The backups to the backups. I at one point I had Mrs. Bags that turned liquid to gel that I got off Amazon that were really helpful, especially if we were on the move, because then you wouldn't have to worry about spillage. So there were basic stuff like that that we would think through.
Yeah.
And still do.
do.
Right? Make sure we have all of our medications, we're hydrating, we're getting our sleep. From there, it's more about managing temperature. So we had those cooling towels
Yep.
that
We
that
actually
we
used those on that trip to Disneyland.
to Disney. Yep. Um, so
Helps the long lines in the sun for sure.
yes. Which was of course just draining. Um, anything, portable fans, I think we've tried those. When we travel by car, well, if we travel at all, extra clothing in case something does happen, right?
Yeah.
Plus some of the cleaning stuff that we would need. So we
Always
find
pack in an extra shirt. For some of the motion sickness thing, we've tried those the pressure point bands. Those ones
yes.
have helped occasionally. Wouldn't say always, but every once in a while they're kind of nice. I usually leave those in the travel bag anytime you're flying, especially if you're going to somewhere that has more motion-based activities
Hmm.
or just a long car ride. Sometimes it's nice to have a little something else that isn't always just medication.
And that's
Um,
a great thing to talk about. So we have a couple different varieties of the motion sickness bands. Some
yeah.
are the relief bands, which those are
Yep.
electronic. We have some that are pressure point that you can get at a drugstore.
Hmm.
Um, so we've tried a bunch of options like that. And um, so let's turn it back to Disney. So the first time we went to Disney was pretty rough on you.
Hmm.
We went in for 2, maybe 3 hours, and then you were just down the rest of the day. You were exhausted. It was just not good.
It wasn't very feasible at that time, though.
And and that was a conglomeration of everything, right? It's the car rides, it's the motion, it's the
It's the all at
t
once.
the heat, the exertion. It was the perfect storm for
Perfect
things
storm.
not working out. And you, again, because you feel bad about what CVS has done to you, right? That you would just keep apologizing profusely.
I
Um,
did. The guilt was on. It's
and
kind of hard to take everybody out and then be the reason that it holds everybody from going out and having fun. That's never sat well.
which is how you feel, right?
Hmm.
Um, and again, this is the changing the mindset. Because for me, this is why I led with the listen, when I vacation hard, like really hard. So that made it worse, right? Um, so CVS gave me an opportunity to take a step back and learn that we don't have to vacation that hard. Not to say I still don't try, because I do. I push the limit sometime, but it's all changed according to what we can and can't handle, right? And what
Yeah.
you can and can't handle and how you're feeling. And I need to be aware of that. So it's a group experience. Is that a good way to put it?
A group learning experience, yeah.
Yes. Uh, it lets you know how well you're able to adapt. And CVS has really taught us how to adapt.
It is kind of forced us to in some ways.
So it's yeah. So it was unfortunate. Um, but you needed to take the time when you needed to take the time, right?
Yeah.
Um, so we started calling it things like forced relaxation time for mom.
For
um,
everybody.
for everybody. But we do what we can. And I think that's something that I needed to learn. Um, but we've worked at it and we've fine-tuned it quite a
Yeah,
bit.
quite a bit.
So that trip to Disney, we went back, I think it was 3 or 4 years after that,
It was about 3.
where we had been fine-tuning our traveling, right? Sometimes even just around town, because that 30 minutes in the car can be very challenging.
Oh yeah.
Um, to
Did a
the
lot of
point,
smaller trips before then, or during that time as well.
uh-huh. So the so that time, that 3 years, we'd been fine-tuning all of our little,
A regimen.
yes,
Yep.
for being able to travel, right? What worked, what didn't, what salty snacks were the best, what, our oral hydration, um, even even if you're feeling minty or salty, or we kind of balance all of those. Um,
Well, we had them for both situations too, because I had headaches along with it. So the
mhm,
peppermint and the mint could help with that.
mhm.
Um,
Which is all
but
stuff
yeah.
we learned along the way, right?
Hmm.
So every little helpful thing we just added to our arsenal, right? The
Yep.
wristbands, the essential oils, the motion sickness, Dramamine things, and when to use the drowsy version or the non-drowsy version.
Non-drowsy. Yep.
um, but we fine-tuned it to the point where 3 years later, after going, this works, this doesn't, um, we went to another theme park, and because you had learned to handle that motion sickness balance so well, you were the only person in the family that didn't get sick
Yep.
on
Nice
some of the
little
rides
flip
we went
there.
on. So it was, we obviously didn't practice enough of what you were learning. Um, but it changed things. It changed it a lot.
Does change the
Um,
dynamic for sure.
so now you don't. We still live by that regimen that we worked on, created
Perfected.
10 years ago, right? This is 10 years ago that we're talking about stuff like that, right?
Hmm.
Um, and we still to this day stick to that because it worked for us, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I wanted, first of all, I think it's really important for us to talk about it because people really struggle with CVS, with traveling, that they have that anticipation, right? What if it goes wrong? What if something happens? What can I do?
Yeah.
Um,
Other patients I've talked to also kind of have the apprehension to even try because of how much it impacts on their day-to-day life.
People are worried
So
about
they
it.
don't want to even try because of how much they're already struggling.
Hmm.
But sometimes just taking that step to try can help me at least start feeling better, even if it's not physically, but maybe even mentally a little bit.
It's
Because
changing
when
the
you're
mindset,
staying at the same 4 walls all the time, it can
which
eat
is
away at you.
which is why you had a mom that went, we need to stop letting CVS control your life. We need to get you out and doing things, right?
Mhm.
I don't want you staring at the same 4 walls. We need to. And we've kind of talked about that because we talked about going to see Pitch Perfect even while you were getting sick. Um,
It's an interesting
you know,
choice, the first movie to go see, but yeah.
it was. We didn't know about it and then, but it worked out in our favor. And see, that's what I'm saying. It was a happy accident. So go and try and have your happy accident, right?
Mhm.
Try it, right? The anticipation factors into that CVS cycle, right? Because you're always anticipating the next issue, the next problem, the next episode. when we can try and change the mindset about how we handle them. Or at
It can take
least,
some time to find
yes.
that balance between feeling comfortable about it and worrying about it.
Yeah. But it's that trial and error process that we've all gone through with trying to find the right medications, right? We
Yeah.
find what works for us. So let's talk about some of the things that work for us.
Sure.
You've mentioned several of them because we've done the pressure point bands or
Yeah.
anti-nausea,
Relief
not
bands as well.
anti-nausea, the motion sickness. But yes, your anti-nausea medications as well, if you have those. Do you want to talk about kind of your toolkit? I know you said we've already kind of talked about you starting a few days before, kind of upping the vitamins and hydration, the CVS supplements and
Nutrition is
hydration.
huge on that too.
What do you have in what I would call your CVS toolkit when you travel?
So for items, I kind of separate it between whether or not you're traveling in a car or by plane.
Good
So
point.
there's
Good point.
different kinds of plans of attack, I'd say, for each one of those, especially if they're a longer car ride or a longer plane ride.
Mhm. Well,
So
and
for,
part of it starts at that point, right?
yeah,
Because then, that was part of our juggling. Either we're going to fly overnight and try and knock you out or drive overnight and try and knock you out. That didn't work for us, but that is something you could try. So that is one point. Give it back to you,
planning it
sorry.
from there.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's it unfortunately doesn't work for me. But for those who it can work for, that could almost be what to plan around.
Hmm.
Because if you can sleep on a car and wherever you're, planning to travel to can be reached by both plane or car,
Hmm.
that would probably be preferable just because you could bypass the whole ordeal doing that in general.
Yes.
Or vice versa if it's, planes works better.
Okay, so
Um,
let's start with car.
okay.
If you were traveling by car, what would you take?
So for the basics, obviously, you want to make sure you have all of your medications, any of your antiemetics, your abortives, anything you may need for just your episodes in general. It's like the first thing that goes in the bag. It's almost always packed, have several different kits, I would say.
Hmm.
Um, so if you have like the main pack bag where you have all your clothes, always bring another shirt or two extra. Um, Still to this day, we'll have the one or two shirts extra. But so yeah, it starts with kind of what the traveling you're going for. If it is like an amusement park, want to make sure you're prepared for those um, more motion sick potentially ventures. So I'd have the pressure point bands. I take the relief band. If you're not sure what that is, I'd probably recommend you guys check it out. It can work for some people. Some also find it a little uncomfortable. But in those, if you're struggling more with headaches as well, because CVS seems to be quite heavily tied to migraine, um, having some peppermint options. I think we have some chapstick we had tried initially that was more peppermint based. Now we have some rollers that's kind of like a
You
peppermint
have the
extract,
essential oils. Yeah.
essential oil,
So we've done the gums, mint, chapstick, anything that you can
chapstick.
kind of get in there because it has anti-nausea qualities, right? You can
Mm,
use that in migraine or not, right? It's the same with ginger. You can bring ginger, some of those gingins, ginger candy. Some people do drink ginger tea. So whatever works for you. Um,
yeah,
some people use the alcohol swabs, which you can't do.
no,
But anything like that that can help with the nausea, that would be kind of, I would lump those all together. So,
yeah.
the gums and mint necessarily, you may not want those in your mouths, but smelling them can be helpful.
Much more for the nausea, I'd say like the salty foods, the snacks. Mine's always takes a little bit more to power through. So like the salt and vinegars is always my go-to because they just have a little bit more that can kind of help stave off the nausea, especially for the longer car rides. And if you're, looking down at your phone a lot, it's going to hit a little quicker. So just making sure to not look down or stare at your phone as much.
Well, typical motion sickness stuff, right? You want the
Yeah.
cooler air. The cooler air helps with
Making
that
sure there's,
nausea as
AC
well.
running.
You're straight ahead looking straight. So don't look at your phone if you have issues with motion sickness. That's a huge no-no. That also helped you with you driving. Once you were able to drive, that really helped with the motion sickness. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a little hint in there too.
It's something when you can kind of expand upon because
Yeah.
it forces you to really kind of look forward.
Mhm.
Almost completely negating any sort of issues with that as well. So that's a good one to consider. I wasn't
Mhm.
even thinking about that. But hydration, gotta gotta keep drinking, no matter how many times you gotta stop to go. Keep drinking.
Well, and what we should talk about here is because one of the big things that we struggle with, more flying than driving, is the
Yeah.
hydration, right? Because you get somewhere, the water tastes funny. It's, or yet it's $8 in the hotel and you're too cheap to want to pay $8 for hotel water. So we also got filtered water bottles
Yep.
that were a little pricey, but we travel with them a lot. So
Mhm.
that helped us. It was just a way for us to think through what some of our struggles were. And the hydration, I think, was really close to the top. Sleep and hydration were like our top two.
They are the top.
Um, yeah. Well, I think I do. I mean, for you, it might be the motion sickness, but
No, it's definitely sleep and hydration.
yeah.
The thing that you can most easily combat is definitely the motion sickness.
Hmm.
Because the sleep you can't really get back when you lose it.
Hmm.
So making sure you have as much as you can is probably the biggest contributing factor.
Right.
Especially because when your body really needs sleep, best thing to give it to sleep. But hydration kind of helps, feel all of the internal organs
Hmm.
so that they can do what they need to do, especially if you're planning to be in the sun for a while.
Hmm.
Um, the more fluid you have in you, the better.
So that would take us to also the electrolyte drinks.
Mhm.
Let's talk about the water for a second, because you have a water that is easier for you to drink than any other bottled water. So, especially when we're struggling with hydration, you will buy a pH balanced water because you call it what?
I call it cotton candy water because it feels like you're absorbing it better.
Right away. It's not
There's some waters
heavy.
it just feels like it's heavy. It's got a different heft to it. But yeah, I think it's Essentia,
Insensia.
yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Essentia. The smart waters are usually the two that I kind of gravitate to, especially when traveling,
Mm-hmm.
just because of how light they feel and
Easy
how I feel
there.
when drinking them.
Yeah. Easy
I
for
feel
you to drink.
so much better.
For you, it does make a difference. So that's something I would say, if you have one that works for you, definitely
Yeah.
stick with that. Then altering some of the electrolyte drinks, Gatorade,
Mm.
Powerade, those pH waters can also have electrolytes. So those can be good to try, especially when you're out and about, or then you could move to some of the IV hydration,
Hmm.
cure, drip, drop, oral hydrations that'll help you with your hydration a little bit more. Um, what else do you have?
So outside pretty much everything we talked about, medications, the small snacks, you want to make sure you have those emesis bags or Ziploc bags if you're trying to pack a little lighter or smaller.
Mm-hmm.
Those fit a little bit better in some of the smaller bags when traveling.
Ziplocs.
Those cooling towels can be huge if you're going to be in
Mm-hmm.
the sun for long periods of time. You can even
Mm-hmm.
use them as a hood. You have a big enough towel.
Yeah, to
The
block
small
the sun.
fans
Mm-hmm.
can help a lot. Sunglasses for those with migraines, I would highly recommend. A sneaky one that I kind of like that I don't feel like many people have tried if you're flying is noise canceling headphones. They help
Specific ones, not
a
the
lot.
earbuds,
Yeah,
not just the
headphones, not the
earbuds,
earbuds.
headphones.
But yeah, headphones.
Now,
Because they can
tell us.
fully
Yeah, I was going to
seal
say,
your ears and kind of stave off the pressure of the pressurized cabin when flying. So it kind of combats a little bit of the squeeze that you feel when you're up in the air.
and for me, I cannot use those with migraine disease. except for takeoff and landing, because it does help minimize that pressure. But otherwise, I can't stand to have them on, which I know not everybody experiences. I'm a little weird when it comes to that, but I find it super helpful for takeoff and landing, for that the abrupt pressure changes, that it helps with that. So I love that you brought that up, because that is something that is specific to flying, if that's an option for you.
I mean, it could also be for driving too, I guess. If you're thinking about going for long inclines, or you're in a very mountainous area and you're just continuing to go up, it can kind of help there too. But you're going to notice it more aptly when flying because of, how high you're actually going.
Mm-hmm.
But no, that's kind of a good stinky one that if you have a chance to try, I'd recommend.
I'd recommend. Yeah, that's now I
yeah.
don't like to fly without them because it has made such a big difference. And yes, I only use them for takeoff and landing.
Others I've shared it with have said they've tried earplugs too,
Mm-hmm.
for those, and it kind of has the same effect.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
That's a great
so
point, because
it's one to try as well. If the noise canceling headphones I know aren't exactly the most approachable item to to have on hand.
I've seen some earplugs that are specifically for migraine, for flying, so it makes sense that those would work. You brought up flying. I think one of the big things is the stress when flying, right? Make sure you have time in between
Yeah,
your
that's
flights, right? Because that just adds to the stress. If something happens, you're delayed. Um, yeah, but we carry on, so you're carrying your medication anyway, so that should be helpful. Do you think car travel or air travel is harder for you? I mean,
I
at
think it
this
depends
at
on
this
the
point.
duration more so than the option.
Right. Well,
Because the
because
duration is going to be more of a battle of attrition than either one is by default.
right.
Um, I'd say initially the car rides were harder because we were driving longer than we were any of the flying we had been doing.
Hmm.
Um, so it's when the duration comes in that I would say there was more of a struggle with them.
And now that
Um,
you're driving, do you feel like it would be different? Do you feel like you would choose differently from initial?
I'd still say it depends on the duration, because that fatigue can still come in there even when you are driving,
Hmm.
especially long distances with without stopping much.
So let's go back to kind of the planning. Do you feel like the planning has actually helped reduce your episodes?
I would say at the very least, for those that it doesn't, it helps minimize the intensity.
Hmm.
Because a lot of it comes from the anxiety as well, because I don't do well with anticipation as either. It's one of those hurry up and waits, and then you're just sitting there with the anxiety building rather than being able to kind of act on anything.
Right.
So that kind of prep beforehand, it kind of helps me work through that a little bit.
Good
So it
point.
definitely helps limit what it could be, compressing into then when it decides to no longer be compressed,
Hmm.
for sure. But um, when you've prepped sufficiently and you're still kind of waiting, it can still kind of be an issue. But the more you go through that regimen,
Hmm.
the more apt you're going to be, um, if it comes up, especially if you start getting more comfortable with it, because it can definitely, in some cases, I'd say, especially for those we've had in the past, almost kind of negate any of the issues we had, because some of those times we've just continued to prep and then we've been so prepared and nothing happened and we're just
Do we
ready
need
to
all of
go.
this?
And then
Yeah,
we're like,
you're
do we
like,
really need to keep doing this? But
well, and that's
yeah, it's
part of
best
the
to keep
trial and error,
seeing it
right?
through.
It's part of the trial and error where we go, okay, so we probably don't need to go to this extent, right? Me looking for hospitals, emergency rooms, urgent cares.
Yeah.
Now would be hydration places, right? Do I need that? Right. So it's things we change as we go through. And now we're so apt functioning, with traveling now because we've been doing it for several years. Um, we don't even notice it anymore, right? Like it's
Yeah.
almost just like, all right, 3 days before vitamins, it's like nobody has to say anything, it just happens now. Um, so I think that's part of it. Um, can we turn it back a second to let's kind of talk about the emotional side of traveling with CVS if you're okay with this, right? Because
Sure.
we talk about the kind of the fear of becoming a burden, right? And how that impacted you and how I was able to adapt and kind of change my way of thinking. Not everybody has that, right? Not
Yeah.
everybody has family or extended family or whoever they're traveling with, friends, um, coworkers, whatever you're traveling with, they don't always understand, right? That this just isn't something you can control.
Hmm.
Um, so to me, it's kind of how do we handle that, right? We know that, right? And we're all pretty adaptive, but not everybody has that ability. um so I would say to choose your travel companions carefully, um
When you can.
if you can, definitely. Solo travel is a coping mechanism, right?
I mean, it can, and the circumstances prevent for it
Mhm.
or allow for it. It's kind of hard if you're traveling with other, work partners or any of that for sure. I could see because they're not going to be super familiar with anything you may be struggling with.
Yeah,
But friends
needing.
and family can also have that same issue where they don't understand.
Hmm.
So just really having those conversations is kind of where I would start. Not always up front if you think it's something you're going to be okay with,
Hmm.
especially if it's during like your okay um, period of your episode. Those 4 stages where you're in that well phase, you might just be able to completely omit it. But if you're in that like second to third phase, we are probably heading towards a little bit of a downside. Being upfront with that can be good. Explaining it to them as best you can, or cheat with a brochure. That kind of helps explain it if you're a little lost for words.
I mean, I
Can
think
it?
that's tough, because first of all, if you were in actively in an episode, we wouldn't be traveling, we'd be canceling, right?
No,
Um,
but you can't always be,
right,
and not everybody can.
right. Yeah, so I think it's a difficult conversation, right? Because although we're very open, not everybody wants to or can be. Um, and that I think CVS patients are already tasked with so much, right? There's so
Mhm.
much that you guys go through, and you know, that fear of being a burden, um, feeling like, you ruined everything for everybody. You didn't. Like I said, it made me slow down. And there's nothing wrong with that because actually I learned to slow down and enjoy things way more than I was allowing myself time for. Um, those are hard conversations to have.
They're very hard conversations to have.
Well, it took you and I a very long time to be able to talk about stuff like that. Yes and no.
Still can. Still have problems.
Nope, there's still things,
There's
yeah.
days.
So CVS has changed the way that we travel with others, right? What we let
Mhm.
others see, um, and what we tell others. So I think, beyond that, because I think we've had to do, not that we've physically traveled, but we've gone other places where friends and family have been and trying to go, you just need some time. is kind of where we leave it. Um, so letting people know. So finding a way for you to communicate with people that you're comfortable with, right?
Yeah.
Um, but
It really comes down to knowing your limits. You
mhm,
got to be familiar with all of the telltale signs that maybe it's time to stop, or if I go past this point, we're going to have an issue. It can take some
right.
time to find those or to recognize them, um, but definitely pay attention to it. Don't ignore them.
Right. You have a very staunch line of if I am going for my antiemetic, that is you take it and you do not move for 20 minutes. So wherever we are, whatever we're doing, we stop and watch the
Sit
world
down
go
for a
by
bit.
for 20 minutes. Right? Because it's gives it time to um come to efficacy in your system, and that's where you feel like things are going. So set the boundaries, right? Let people know, hey, so we do.
Yeah.
We all sit down and chill out for 20 minutes if we're just going to sit there and talk, or you know, people watch. I like people watching. um set the boundaries and do what you're comfortable with, but don't push yourself to exhaustion.
Yeah.
Make sure you're setting those boundaries and sticking to them, because they can be very helpful.
It does help to have pretty firm boundaries, or at least know where yours are, so that you can either let those who are traveling with you know before they, see it in your face at that point, going, "Hey, how you doing?" And you're like, "No, I'm fine." Don't just keep saying I'm fine. Let them know we're not doing too well. We should probably
Mhm.
slow down. Is probably the best call to make for those.
Yes. Yeah. So even if we don't finish our hike in Yosemite, we went, we saw things, we walked around, still crossed off, right? We still did it. We still
Don't win.
went, right? Um, and I think that's what it comes down to, is we went, we did what we were capable of, and we all still had a nice time, right?
Yeah,
So
still got
don't
out there to do something.
don't let CVS stop you, right? I mean, if you're actively in an episode, it will stop you, but don't let
It
it
will stop.
limit you. Yeah.
I wouldn't let it be the reason why you're telling yourself you can't.
Right.
It's just find the moments you can and take them while they're there.
Hmm. Plan the best you can without overstressing yourself, your loved ones, right? Because we can only plan so much.
Yeah.
The rest we have to learn to live with, and really learn to live, right? Don't let it control you, but still enjoy things, right? We don't want
Hmm.
to we don't want to stare at the same four walls. We want to be able to get out there, and even if we go to a theme park that we can't go on all the rides, people watching's fun, right? It's I think
Yeah.
for me it was a big mindset shift, um, it, in learning what we couldn't do, and then just we kept learning, we kept changing, we kept adapting, we kept trying more things, and now you very successfully travel. I can't remember the last time you had an issue traveling, and you go, what, 4 or 5 times a year that you travel somewhere.
Yeah.
Um,
Got 2 times now.
yeah, so it can be done. And I think that was kind of more or less the conversation we wanted to have around the podcast, right? Is talking about it, because there's a lot of opportunities. Find what works for you.
Yeah.
Talk to others, right? Um,
Be communicated.
yeah. What helps, what doesn't. Communicating when you're not able to, right? There's no as a boundary.
Yeah. Find your boundaries.
Find your
Um,
boundaries, find
take
what
care of
works for
yourself.
you. Hmm. because it's possible. It may take a few tries, but I think overall, I think that's kind of what we wanted to talk about, right? Was it's possible. It just may take a few tries.
You know, just like CVS treatment in general. It's a little bit of trial and error to find out what
Exactly.
works.
Yes.
But the best thing to do is to not stop trying, for sure.
I love to hear that from you. It's one travel lesson you learned the hard way that might help someone else avoid the same mistake. Well, for me, it was probably over planning. It was over planning because I do. Like I said, it's um, well, first I'm a planner, um, but too much too fast.
Too much too fast.
You don't need to plan every second of the day. Sometimes it's nice to just be somewhere like Yosemite and looking at different things for the day, right? If that's what you can do, that is still amazing. Um, but for me, yeah, it was the you don't need to plan every second of every day. So forced relaxation. But yeah, I went a little crazy at first with planning like hospitals, emergency rooms, urgent cares. I don't do that anymore. Well, obviously, you'd be at the age that you could do that yourself if it was something you wanted to do. But at the time, I felt like it was needed. Um, but
It
yeah,
also
that
might depend on the kind of individual you are too, because if that's the level of planning that makes you feel
comfortable.
safe and secure about it, dive in.
Yes.
No, plan it out. If it feels like that's something that's going to push you over the edge, worry about it if it happens. Be like, nope, we'll be good in the moment.
Well, I think that's a great place to kind of wrap it up, right? Because it really is about learning what works for you.
Yeah.
Feeling confident in what works for you or what you're comfortable doing, right?
Mhm.
And plan for that level. In the meantime, there's little tips and tricks that we've talked about, what we carry, what other people carry. For you, salt and vinegar. For me, it's Fritos. They're so salty. For
Really
motion
good too.
sickness, I'm like, it's finding what works for you. Um, and then making it make you successful, just like trial and error medications. This is trial and error vacationing.
Mhm.
Um, do you have anything else you want to share before we wrap up today?
I would say more so about nutrition, because some people don't want to eat because then they feel like they have something to throw up, especially with like the hydration.
Okay.
That if anything, I wouldn't be afraid to eat and hydrate as much as you can, because A, your body needs it, and B, it's better to have something to throw up than to have nothing to throw up.
Well,
It's going to
you
be a
learned
lot less
that from
strenuous on you.
you learned that from experience, having something in there versus the dry heaving.
Yeah.
Um, but that's a good point. So that is something we should talk about before we wrap up, is because there are people that also have food triggers,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you know how I am with traveling because I have dietary restrictions. So a lot of times I travel with my own food. It's just easier. So that could be something, if you have food triggers, that could definitely be something that you need to
Better.
consider,
Mm-hmm.
right? Um, because I've traveled enough that some places it's very difficult for me to eat. And that is why I've learned to travel with my own food, to learn what's safe for me. And that can very much come down to things with traveling with CVS, really with any chronic condition that involves any kind of food, but not getting the proper nutrition or, struggling with nutrition or the food triggers, it's something you definitely need to be aware of.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a really good point to make as well. I feel like although we've been talking for quite some time, that it only would continue. So I would say, look at some of the online communities, CVSA online communities. So you can find it via the CVSA website, our social media pages. Also, people are talking about it. We posted about it. because people shared a lot of the things that they take, even comfort items, blankets,
Comfort
eye
items.
masks, right?
Yep.
So there's a lot of those options as well, especially if it's applicable for you. Not necessarily you, but
Mm-hmm.
things like that can help. So it's a lot of thinking about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, what could be helpful, especially if you're thinking, food related triggers, motion sickness triggers, infection's a big one, right?
Very big one.
Sometimes you pick up some of the nastiest bugs while you're traveling. um well,
Don't let that discourage you.
everywhere. Yes. Be like us, you wear masks, you wipe everything down, you've become germaphobes because infection triggers are a big thing. You use a lot of hand sanitizer.
Bring the hand sanitizer.
But it is, you're thinking about what works for you, what works for your triggers, right? Um,
Know your triggers.
if you know your triggers, because that can start us on a whole nother conversation, but
Whole other conversation.
what we've learned has been based on our triggers, your triggers. I say our triggers because, migraine. But yeah, no, I think those are all really good ideas. And you brought up the food thing, which was good because that's something that a lot of people struggle with and have with CVS, or the food trigger. So make sure that's something that you're aware of as well when you're traveling. I think that's most of what I had. Did you have anything else you want to bring in there?
No, I mean, we covered everything at least I can think of for this topic.
Okay, perfect. Well, I appreciate talking with you today, Jason. It was good to see you
Yes,
again.
me too. Let's do it again.
These communities, the online communities, e-newsletters that CVSA has, support group pages, have been really meaningful in us learning about all of these tips and tricks. And we have also shared them as well. This is just kind of a new platform for us to be able to talk about it. So
Yeah.
thank you for trying to keep me on track and sharing about your experiences and what works for you. And I'm very excited to hear that things are really going well with your traveling in your CVS.
Thank you.
People are really excited to hear that there are people that manage CVS episodes pretty well. So I'm excited that you're one of them, because there's times that we didn't think that would ever be a thing.
I was also one of those who didn't think it was possible either. But
Which is terrible
it's
that we're
nice.
giggling about it. It's terrible because it was such a rough time. And it's tough when we talk to people that have that same thing, right? That they're struggling, and they don't want to keep trying. That's a whole other podcast, because we could talk about that, right? That it was very difficult, that whole trial and error process. But you're proof that it works. You're proof that the trial and error works on finding, what works for you for traveling, to the point where, the rest of the family all got sick in a theme park and you were the only one that didn't. So thank you for sharing with us today, Jason.
Of course. I hope it can help some others out there who are also struggling, because I know
Definitely.
it's not easy. Just keep powering through from what works, and hopefully one day it'll be good too.
I like that. Thank you for listening to Episodes, a podcast from the Cyclic Vomiting Syndrome Association. Be sure to subscribe, support, and share. We're here to amplify CVS perspectives, spark meaningful conversations, and help change the way that cyclic vomiting syndrome is seen and understood. Don't forget to like, follow, share, check out resources on the CVSAonline.org website, and keep the conversations about CVS going.